Welcome to the 2018 year in review and predictions for 2019 from Redgate. We are the whole evangelist team at Redgate Software, and we do lots of activities with the rest of Redgate. And this is one that we're going to do looking back at things this year. So this slide looks back at a lot of things this year. It's actually not completely updated. At Redgate, we help people do compliant database DevOps. And one of the very cool things about working at Redgate, my favorite thing on this slide, is that we do DevOps at Redgate ourselves. So at the time this graphic was created, which many releases have passed since then, but at that time, at least a month ago, we were at that point at 582 product releases so far this year. That is from a company with less than 300 people. So it is possible to release frequently in different industries across the spectrum, and we are really a company that gets to do what we enable, which I think is a really cool thing to be part of. In terms of who we are, I'm already talking, so I'm going to go first. I am the newest evangelist to join Redgate. I've been here for about 4 months now, and it's been amazing to join this team of people around me, which includes amazing people like Grant Fritchey.
Oh no, we can't hear Grant.
Grant muted himself.
Grant is a very quiet fellow. Known for his shyness.
Yeah, he did something. Hey, while Grant's figuring this out, I'll go.
How about now?
Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Yay.
All right. So first thing I said was nice things about Kendra, but I'll skip that now. And my dog. God, yeah, this is awesome. Well, I'm glad the mic is working. Well, my name's Grant Fritchey. I've been with Redgate for 8 years. I've been using it for 19. I started using it more or less the day SQL Compare came out. So maybe that's only 18 and a half. But anyway, good God. Shoot the dog.
They're excited.
Yeah.
They're like, compare all, yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Go Grant, go Grant, go Grant.
One of the people I like working with is Kathi Kellenberger.
Ah, thank you. I like working with you too, all of you. So I joined Redgate about, well, a little over a year ago, and it's just been an amazing, hit the mic again, sorry, amazing year. And I'll say nice things about Kendra. She's wonderful, and it's just fantastic to have her on the team. She's the thing I like best about her, she has so many great ideas. So working overtime on the ideas, I think. That's okay. We like it. So I'm the editor of Simple Talk, and I think the first product I used with Redgate was SQL Backup back in the day. Had used it a lot, long time ago, back in the early 2000s, I guess. So, and my mentor for years has been now my coworker, Steve Jones.
Thank you, Kathi. It's been wonderful to know all of you. So I've known all of you for quite some time. I've actually been at Redgate for, I believe, 12 years now. But interesting fact, I've known the company almost his entire lifetime. So I've known the owner since 2001 when they first started selling SQL Compare. And they were actually my first customer at SQL Server Central. We sold them advertising. So as the company has grown across the last 19 years or 18 years, I've been a part of that as well. And so I'm an evangelist that runs SQL Server Central, which is my site dedicated to helping you get better at your job. And I work for Redgate trying to promote this database DevOps stuff because I'd like to see us build better database software. And with that, Kendra, take it away.
Yeah, let's do it. So today we've got, not a super formal agenda. I think you can see from the slides that this presentation is super serious and stuff. But first, we're going to talk about the year in review. Then we're going to go do a little predictions about 2019. Now, when we get to the predictions, if you have just things that you're like, oh, I wish it would do this, that's totally valid too. If you've got stories for the highs and lows and moment of oops and glory, do share those. And we are going to go ahead and dive in. And this picture, I think, is worth 1,000 words. But I don't know what words exactly Grant's going to use to explain this one. But I have to say, man, I'm really jealous of this photo.
Well, funny enough, I'm not even that big a Star Wars fan, to be completely honest. However, past summit this year, it was the 20th summit, and in retrospect, for 20 summits, They brought in some, various things. We did some few things at the welcome reception, a little different, made it into a bit of a celebration. But one of the things we had was there was a group of people coming in Star Wars costumes, so you could get pictures taken with Star Wars people. And they said, "Hey, Grant, we got this great idea. We want you to introduce it walking out with stormtroopers flanking you." I'm like, "Yeah, fine, as long as I get to be Darth Vader and you play the Imperial Death March." And they went, "Well, yeah, that was the plan." And so, yes. So yeah, I walked out as Darth Vader to the Imperial Death March because yes, I could.
I mean, I really think that's the right decision in life. Now,
Yeah.
I was so excited by Grant's moment of glory that I was so excited to post it to our team in Slack, because like a lot of companies, we use Slack at Redgate. In fact, Grant and Kathy and I did a recent video debating whether Slack is a horror show or something amazing. But it turns out that when I posted this in our team channel, I didn't actually post it in our team channel. I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but I accidentally posted this to the general channel in the company Slack, which goes out to everyone in the company. And that moment, it's just that it's like the moment when you realize you ran a script against the wrong SQL server, when you realize you posted something in a very public place and you're new. Like I was new and I was just like, oh, I really hope 300 people wanted to see Grant in this Darth Vader costume. It turns out they did. Like if you look at the icons at the bottom, people actually Vadered it. So I felt better. It turns out it was great. And that, I think, was the moment where I was like, yeah, I'm at the right company, because it was okay to post that goofy photo there for literally everyone to see. So that was a moment. We've done a lot of talks also around the world this year, including at PASS. So one of the questions I had when coming up with this is, what is your favorite thing that you talked about around the world, whether a virtual event or an in-person event? What did you really enjoy presenting about in 2018?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. Yeah, since that's my slide up there. So I presented on Azure machine learning, and I couldn't even tell you how many different places I presented on it. And what was really fun is I'm never going to get to be a data science. I'm planning on working at Redgate until I can no longer work. But I think it's just such an interesting topic, and I think that databases administrators and developers should look at this, especially if they're relatively young, because who knows what their jobs will look like in 10 years or 15 years, or if those jobs will even exist. So that was why I really enjoyed, and hopefully inspired a few people to take a look at some of the education that Microsoft has available for this and some of the really cool tools. So that was mine.
I had a lot of fun watching that session, Kathy. And so Kathy shows in that session a lot of free stuff you can use to get started. You don't have to spend a lot of money to learn this, which is awesome.
Cool. I also recommend learning it for the reasons you were saying. And the biggest thing is that, okay, so you're not going to be a data scientist, fine. You're going to support them. And wouldn't you want to know what their job is and what data they need and how they do things in order to support them better? So, yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. How about you, Grant? What was your favorite stuff to talk about this year?
Funny enough, my favorite talk was last week. Between Tony Davis, Phil Factor, and myself, we came up with a presentation on SQL injection that worked. I was really, really, really happy. But I mean, mostly because of Phil Factor's work. That was the foundation. Every bit of it was built on his work. And then, I was just the dancing monkey on top. But it was a tune I enjoyed dancing to very much. I'm looking forward to actually trying to figure out a way to carry that forward and present it all over the place next year. It's such a huge topic. It's so important. It's so foundational to everything that we keep screwing up, so that I really want to get it fixed. SQL injection must die. So it was a great, I really had fun presenting it. And I don't like praising my own presentations, but this one I'm terribly excited about.
It was a really great talk, and there was a lot of chat during SQL in the City. If you want to watch that, that's actually, if you go to youtube.com/Redgate, go to all the videos. There is a recording of SQL in the City stream December 2018, and Grant's talk is in there.
Mhm.
Really good.
Can I steal that session, Grant? Because I want to give it at user groups when I go around. You know, I have my regular presentation, and I want to take a, you know,
No, see,
smaller, maybe not an hour or however long it took for you, but it's just a snippet of that just to show people.
no, I see. I stole it from Phil Factor, so you can't steal it from me.
Everyone wants to be a hacker.
Actually, no. Of course, you can steal it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll borrow it. How's that?
How about you, Steve? What presentations should we steal from you?
So I do a lot of DevOps talk. The last couple of years, that's been a majority of my job, where I do go out to various events and I talk about both Redgate tools, but just database DevOps in general. And so I think my favorite one this year, it would be one of two, but both were at InfoSec events. So I went to the ISACA conference one place, and the in Cork, and then the US InfoSec conference in DC. And at both places, it was interesting because the audience was very different. It was mostly auditors, CSOs, security people, that kind of thing. And they were fascinated by the idea of database DevOps, and they were excited, and they thought it was hugely important. And they also believe that some of the things that I emphasize, like using version control, are just critical for you running a compliant business. Like, they were like, doesn't matter if it's code, if it's configuration, got to be in source control. So that was exciting for me to get outside of the SQL world and see that same thing.
Yeah, very cool. My favorite actually has to do with getting outside my normal world a little bit too. I got to give a keynote address at the SQL in the City summits we had in person, and writing a keynote. I had never really done this before I started at Redgate, but you have an interesting, different challenge. It was outside of my normal comfort space because you have to address the whole audience and you have to kind of zoom out a little bit. The whole idea of a keynote is getting everybody ready and kind of getting people excited. So it's not just a demo usually on how to do something. You want to usually go bigger picture. And at first I wasn't sure how to do it, but then I really enjoyed it because you get driven to do a little bit of research, get a little bit creative. And I thought it was tons of fun. So for folks who are already used to speaking a little bit, I encourage you to seek out a keynote opportunity and stretch your legs that way, because it is kind of an interesting, fun challenge, and I really enjoyed it. There are some events that I heard about from you guys where you went to that were awesome. And Kathi sent this photo in of Oslo, one of her favorite events. I didn't get to go to Oslo. Kathi, what made the Oslo event special, and why would you recommend it to people to attend?
Well, special for me because even though I've traveled a lot in the US, I haven't traveled to a lot of other countries. In fact, I had never been across the Atlantic Ocean until my interview for Redgate last year. So getting to go to Oslo was just a real treat for me. And of course, Catherine, and hi Catherine, I know you're on here, and the team did just an amazing job. Everything was flawless. It's really great when you go to a SQL Saturday and you get to hang out with the organizers and talk to them, and they're smiling and not stressed out. So this was one of those. So that was why it was a special treat for me to get to visit a new country, and also just a fabulous event.
Catherine says in the Q&A, she says, yay, Oslo, we were so happy to have you here. And Robert also says, I really, really recommend SQL Saturdays. And that was a SQL Saturday in Oslo.
Yes, it was a SQL Saturday.
Very, very cool. How about you, Grant? Any faves?
I got one favorite, but I'm prejudiced. Past summit, always great. Man, it's really hard to say. SQL Saturday Oslo was amazing, flat out. Great event, just great event. But I also went to some other ones. I went to a really small one out in South Dakota that was fantastic. Really well run, great venue. I mean, small college, small university, but still fantastic event with great people. They don't always have to be giant to be really good. I think the most fun I had this year at an event was SQL Grillin', and that was just a blast. So you have fun next year, Kendra, since I know you're the one going.
I just got my session accepted yesterday for 2019.
Cool. For those who don't know about my event there, though, there is a bad story I'm not going to share here, because for those who know it, it's not an appropriate story. But I will give you a recommendation to avoid problems later.
I don't know this story, so
No worries, I'll tell it.
how inappropriate is it? Steve, how inappropriate is it? Do you know this story?
I do not know, so I'm not the one to ask. But
Oh, good.
yeah.
Do you have any more appropriate stories? Or less appropriate, that's fine too.
Now, me or Grant?
Yeah, you, Steve.
No, you're up.
Yeah.
What was your favorite event this year? I love that we're lingering
He's
right
gone
after
into
the
denial.
inappropriate story.
Yeah, I try to avoid inappropriate stories as much as possible. So my favorite event of the year is really SQL Bits, but I didn't get to go this year because of scheduling conflicts, and unfortunately I won't go next year. But I went to a new event this year. I went to the Music City Tech event in Nashville, and I really enjoyed that. So it was kind of a mix of development stuff and database, but they did a great job running it. It's at a college, lots of people show up, and I thought that was a really fun event to just try this year.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna totally sound like this is a fake recommendation, but it's actually totally not. And maybe it is that I just joined Redgate and I'm still like super fangirl, but I really, really loved the SQL in the City summits that I got to attend in person. So one thing about these is some of these events are free. And if they aren't free, sometimes you can get a code from a friend of yours at Redgate. We're your friends. So if you have a chance in the future, go. The thing I like about these events is there's training at them and then also a lot of time to have conversations with both practitioners and people like us about what is the best way to tackle a challenge. And that is always my favorite thing about a conference, is when there's a mix of getting to get inspired by sessions and getting to have those conversations. So whether it's one of our events that you attend or another vendor's events, I wouldn't rule those out of your planning, especially if you can get a deal on them or get them for free. I would also consider those for your training purposes, because generally there's going to be a mix of content about what the vendor is providing, as well as general purpose content. And we had people like Bob Ward speak from Microsoft, lots of really cool people talking about the future of the data platform too. So I do think SQL Saturdays are great. I love all that too, but like expand your scope as well, because I was really impressed by how much fun it was to do those SQL in the City summits. I had a great time. So on a more sober note, not everything that happened this year was good news for sure. We lost some folks in the community, and Steve put together the slides. So Steve, do you want to talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm getting older. I'm old. Like I think a lot of our evangelists are getting quite old and experienced. But one of the downsides of that is that we do lose people over time. And so Stephen Hawking died this year. He's a big science kind of geek, I guess. A lot of us have known who Stephen Hawking is. He's been on the Big Bang Theory. He's been in the world of science for many, many years. But he's been a professor at Cambridge University, which is where Redgate was founded and still is today. So he died, but then we also lost some people in our community. So Tom Roush, if any of you were lucky enough to know Tom, he was an amazing storyteller and a wonderful human being that died early in the year. We also suddenly and unexpectedly lost Robert Davis earlier this year, who was, I think, one of the people that's helped me many, many times across the years in the SQL world. We also lost Aaron Lowe somewhat unexpectedly, which was a surprise. I didn't even know about it at first. And then just recently, at the end of the year, we lost Naomi Williams. And I read something about it, and I pointed out Naomi because we kind of lost her for mental health issues. And so I always wanted to just remind people that you're never alone out there. No matter how tough life seems, please reach out to somebody else. Myself, other people. We're always here to help you if we can.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah. So I think, just taking a moment to remember them is good. And then now let's move on to other stuff.
Yeah. Thanks so much for adding that, Steve. It's been a tough year, and that's going to happen sometimes, but hopefully we can be as good as we can to each other and help out wherever we can.
Yeah.
Other things that have happened this year. There's been a lot happening that impacts the world of data, and a lot that makes our jobs more and more interesting. So one thing that I learned recently that I hadn't really thought of. I was listening to an episode of the Reply All podcast, which is just a podcast about things that happen on the internet. And they did a show about having your Snapchat account hacked. And it was this window into this world where they basically say one of the things about this is if your phone number has now become sort of like our social security number here in the United States is, but a very personal piece of information, and you become vulnerable if other people have your phone number, because now our phone numbers are tied to such things as 3-factor authentication and SIM swapping, things that allow people to get access to your phone as if they were you, allows them and then entry to do a lot of really invasive things in your life if you haven't taken steps to prevent it, which the long and the short of this is information that we didn't used to think of as being that sensitive, like, oh, okay, someone gets your name and address and phone number, what harm can happen? There's actually quite a lot of harm that can happen from that. And that makes a lot of the stuff on this slide even more scary. Steve, do you want to talk through some of the items on this slide, which has adorable photos, but is a little bit creepy?
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to mention, right, we had the State of DevOps report this year finally include the database, which I think is fantastic, right? It's been many, many years we haven't done that. So that was kind of a sign that not just us, right, but also application developers, other people are starting to recognize that the database is really critically important to how we do DevOps. But then we had other things as well. So I'm sure all of you have probably heard of the meltdown inspector bugs in our CPUs. That was actually this year. Like, it feels like we've been living with that for a long time, but it occurred, it was released, the first exploits in January of this year. And so since then, they've continued to find other problems, which is very disconcerting, right, for somebody that cares about security, what's going to happen. But we've also had lots of data breaches, which is something we can control or we're affected by in our industry quite a bit. Most recently, we had the Marriott one. We've had various other ones through the year. And so I worry about this because it's all the work we're doing, we're still having all these data breaches occur. And while I'm not sure the Marriott one was actually 500 million, because if you do the math of guests and locations and days, that feels high. But in any case, it was a big breach, something we should be worried about as well. And then the last couple of things I thought were just interesting ones that occurred to me this year that came up. First, in the upper right-hand corner of the Mars, we sent another rover to Mars that landed, which was super cool, right, for somebody that likes us kind of growing in the world. But what was amazing is the way that they landed this thing. They used a lot of AI and they used help because, for them to get a sensor reading back from Mars is minutes, so they can't control that in real life. So it was actually kind of interesting that the landing here was much more capable than any we've had in the past remotely. There have been other ones as well you could read about. We landed on an asteroid somewhere, other things. And then the last one is AI has been a hot topic in a data platform. I know Kathy's talked about data mining. We see it from Microsoft all over the place with bots and new features in SQL Server like machine learning services, et cetera. But it's amazing to me how far this is advanced in some ways. So there's lots of things I think we've seen with AI, and we have colleagues that speak at various events where I don't know about you three, but I think AI sometimes is kind of hokey, like it's not really solving problems.
It's not important to you to know whether or not you would have survived on the Titanic?
Yeah, well, exactly. Right.
I mean, that's
some of
the
the ways it
worst
works.
demo ever, but
Sometimes it reminds you more of artificial sweetener than like actual intelligence. You're just like,
Right.
yeah, that's sort of weird. It's not like the real thing.
Right, and some of the demos we've seen, like I'm sure, have you all seen the dog versus muffin one? Have you seen that one where they take dogs like your dog, Kendra, so little dogs, pictures of dogs, and they try to identify them with machine learning.
Oh.
The problem is, right, like blueberry muffins look like dogs sometimes with the white and the brown fur and the eyes. So sometimes what's funny is Microsoft has showed this demo where they can't really tell if it's a dog or a muffin.
Yeah. Is it a corgi bun or is it a loaf of bread? I can't tell sometimes.
Right. So it's interesting. But if you haven't listened to the Google AI duplex conversation, I would encourage you to do it. So it was at the keynote in, I think, May of this year, or April. If you go back and listen to it, it's eerie how well this actually works. Like, it's a little bit scary. And I think that's one of those things as we move forward in the future, we really have to think about as data people. What data do we use? Is it ethical? How do we disclose this? How do people know if they're talking to a computer or not? It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in healthcare, there's a lot of applications for AI. For example, you can predict like which people in the ICU might become septic, and try to intervene. So at least in healthcare, I've heard a lot about really good applications. So, but yeah.
Well, there's always great applications, but they can go
Yeah.
bad very quickly too. So that's the problem. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic that we don't want to depend on human doctors, right? Because we can only retain a certain amount of information in our head. We can't think through all the diagnostic stuff. But it's certainly, we want to be careful with it as well, because it could get bad quickly.
Yeah. Robert has 2 AI requests from the audience. Auto tagging my photos. Isn't it kind of amazing that one hasn't happened yet? And transcribing the podcast I listen to. Now, that second one is near and dear to my heart, Robert, because they keep coming out with new services for transcription in Azure, and I keep trying them. Haven't tried one lately, but I'm interested to check again now, because I have been paying for people to do machine-assisted transcriptions. And like you, I'm like, come on, can't Siri do this? Come on.
He said,
So it's interesting that it's taken
otter.ai
us.
is good.
Huh?
He says otter.ai is good.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. And I am interested. So one of the other things that come out of some of this AI stuff is some things which, like little startups which came in as disruptors and claim to be using AI. There have been some exposés on them where they look into it and they're like, their version of AI is basically Mechanical Turk.
Right.
They're hiring
Right.
people to do the AI behind the scenes. I'm not saying that transcription service is doing that. I'm just saying that's another thing we had happen this year, is these stories about artificial intelligence being kind of old school Mechanical Turk as well, which is always kind of fun.
The high-tech Russian robot that was, a person in a costume.
Yeah.
Some of the
Sometimes
stories.
the future is farther away than we think about that.
I mean,
Yeah.
as exciting as all the new science is, though, I'm still just bothered by the fact that there's so many hacks. I mean, we are so clearly at risk, as this, we are a wildly more connected society with more and more stuff, and yet they just released the new thing, and guess what the number 1 password is?
Password.
Guess what number 2 is?
1, 2,
Password
3,
2,
4,
3.
4,
5.
5, 6. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 has moved up multiple places, so people are getting more secure. Oh.
Yeah.
It's just sad.
We did have a comment, by the way, which I think on this topic of data breaches, which is worth remembering. If you're in the United States, checking your credit report regularly is absolutely a best practice you can do. You can also look into things like freezing your credit reports to try to minimize the risk of what can happen if your phone SIM is swapped or these things happen to you. You can also do things like get a secondary phone number from Google Voice and give that phone number out to people rather than your actual phone number, to try to limit who has the actual phone associated with that. So if you're interested in additional protection, there's tools.
A single password for every single website you have.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
a single password per website. No.
Like, no, Grant.
One per login.
Oh,
right.
That's always fun.
Do it. One per. Yeah, it's painful. I won't lie, but there are tools out there. LastPass. Others.
1Password.
Yeah, 1Password.
Vicky Harp, who now works for Microsoft, I remember she tells a story of how she likes to, those security questions you get that are free form answer, like, what's your grandmother's middle name? She likes to put unique identifiers in those, because how hard would it be for someone to figure out related names to you based upon your family history, which is public record? So
right.
You can take this. I think it is becoming reasonable to take this farther and farther.
Yeah, slowly.
And hopefully technology will make it easier, but there are sure to be bumps in the road as we go.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of making the road a little easier, a lot of things have changed in Redgate things. Now, this is near and dear to our hearts because one of the things we get to do is give feedback to the product teams at Redgate and say, how do we make things easier for the people who are using our tools? And, we get to gather that feedback from people. So it's really exciting when improvements make it into the products and when we get new products to solve problems. This screenshot came from Kathi. And Kathi, what are you excited about when it comes to changes in SQL Monitor this year?
Yeah, the whole estate section is new. And I know they set me down and probably some of you and some of our customers and said, hey, what does a database administrator need to know first thing in the morning? And, so some of the ideas, again, they're probably an intersection of the same thing that you all gave them. I said, well, I need to know if any, backups are getting missed. I need to know what things need patched and they kind of told them some of the ways I kept track of this stuff. So I'm just really, really excited to see these very useful pieces of information and that's easy to use and just you can go right there. And one of the things I love about just Redgate software in general is that maybe not V1, but we do get to a point where the interface is just so easy to use and so smooth, and that's another thing I love about this. So.
I think Steve had a voice in this feature too. I think this one, like when I first joined Redgate, I remember there was a meeting where we were after the initial preview of this, which you can see online for free. Steve pointed out in the meeting, he said, oh, well, what about not just cumulative updates, but what about things like patches for like these GDR out of band security releases that are things for the Spectre patch. And then that got added in after that. So it was like my introduction to the fact that you really can make a difference. And a little suggestion you have can make appear in the product pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, we get feedback all the time. Last week, all of us were in the UK. We were all giving feedback to product teams, and slowly some of that stuff will make it into products over time. But we love hearing feedback from all of you out there, things that we could, add to the products that would make your life easier.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, and it's always worth suggesting because one thing I've learned is that some features can be quick to implement. A lot of it depends on, what's currently being worked on and then just how easy it is for something to change. When it came to Monitor, I asked a question about, hey, why isn't this represented for a deadlock? And then there was a pull request the next day. And I was just like, whoa, maybe hold on. But it was really good stuff.
Yeah.
What other favorite stuff happened this year that you guys are excited that you would like to show people? What makes you happy to talk about what we do?
Well, everyone knows. I think there's probably people who don't know what SQL Server is, and they know I'm excited about SQL Prompt. Seems to be a thing. But I'm excited about SQL Prompt. We've got some new tooling in SQL Prompt that actually does code analysis. And it looks for a whole bunch of common, code smells and T-SQL oopsies, and will identify them for you as you're typing. So it will track them down and let you know that you're doing questionable things and maybe you want to do something about it. Or you can actually have it review a script and look through and find the questionable choices that you've made. That one just blows me away. I just love it because it changes how we're doing development, right? Prompt changes how we do development just because it made things faster, and then it made things more accurate. And now, by the way, it's making them better. That's just cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, I think SQL revision is one of those amazing things that I've talked about and been working with the last couple of years. Especially the Data Masker product this year, because it really changes the way that I would do development. The way that I've worked for decades is, you create a database and then you make changes, and then I have to figure out what changes are and deploy them somewhere else. And then sometimes I mess up my system or I'm trying to do something. And so I spend a lot of time trying to undo what I just did or rebuild it, or I back up and restore from production, which is what a lot of us have done over the decades. And so, having the clone technology in there and then being able to mask data really is fundamental. It's some of those things that I wish we had been doing for 30 or 40 years, not for a few years. It's really changing the game, and hopefully people will start to adopt whether you want to use Redgate products or not, but use something like that, data virtualization, that lets you set up and reset and rebuild environments quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve has some really, I love your demos of this. You did one at SQL in the City in person where he was showing a workflow of, I'm rolling through making some changes and oops, this happened. And what if I want to reset? And he rolls through it in a way where you feel like you're there and it's an actual problem solving scenario. Although the T-SQL, I will have to say, the T-SQL isn't super complicated, which I think is actually a plus to the demo. But I would kind of like to see you get in there for the V2 with like this mess of super complicated stuff. Although people just get like distracted and start being like, could you rewrite that?
Yeah, they get lost if you make
more,
it
I'm like, I
anything
know
other
I
than
did that
simple.
demo that way.
Yeah, you got to keep it simple.
What if you used a temp table?
Yeah, exactly. So somebody in the chat actually says SQL Search changed the way that their last team worked, which I think is great. SQL Search is free. You can go download it today, but if you have a large database, and especially if you're switching projects, trying to figure out where things are, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Back when I was a consultant, I did not know about SQL Search. I was familiar with a lot of Redgate products, but I hadn't used SQL Search. And I actually had a client on a short-term engagement be like, you don't know what SQL Search is. And they gave me like an impromptu demo right there. They were like so passionate. They're like, and it's free. You should have all your clients use it. And I was just like, whoa. I should learn this because clearly it's got some raving fans.
Yeah.
But it is great when we get to give products away for free as well. My favorite product that I am really, really enjoying is actually on this slide about naming things is hard, because my favorite product that I've been developing, like I really want to develop best practices and get input from a lot of people in the community, not just from our evangelist team, but also from people out there using SQL change automation about best practices. And this can actually vary by implementation, because this is one of the tools that's so flexible that your best practices may actually vary depending on how you're using the tool. Now you may say, wait, SQL change automation, what is she talking about? And that's because the name has changed this year. This is the product formerly known as ReadyRoll. And one of the things we got this year, I don't know if this is a highlight or a low light, but some things stay the same eternally, which is that naming things is hard. And no matter what you name something, it's gonna have some problems, sometimes more problems than others. So if you have been using Redgate's ReadyRoll, just get used to it being called SQL Change Automation. We've got a whole like licensing page that explains basically like it's a rebrand. That's the gist of it, is it's a rebrand. We also had other rebrands in the space. And these, I actually have had folks at conferences come up to me and be like, why did Microsoft rename Visual Studio Team Services into Azure DevOps Services? I don't think it should be named Azure. And I'm like, it's a rebrand. Microsoft
and it all runs, but it all runs on, what's that word? Azure. So, well, that one never bothered me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think naming things is easy. It's renaming things that gets people upset, and I for one don't quite understand why we rename things so often. I think it's because people in marketing like to justify salaries, but in any case, it is what it is.
Well, it is what it is, but I actually do think there's something interesting about the word Azure in here. I have heard several folks at Microsoft, including, I believe I heard Bob Ward say this, that Azure no longer means cloud only. The word Azure now means cloud and on-prem. So what does the word Azure just mean Microsoft now?
I don't know. Azure means blue. Azure's my dog, so that's what I think it is.
Yeah, this is Azure.
Yeah.
Right.
He was such a data platform person that he named his dog Azure. That's what we learned today. Do you put that on?
I didn't name the dog. My daughter did, which was funny because everybody thought that, and I was like, no, my daughter just, I don't know why she picked that name, but that's the name.
She heard you saying that word so much.
I guess she heard it a lot and just picked the name. So who knows?
Does anyone in the audience have a dog named Azure?
Yeah.
I'm kind of going to guess no.
Back in the day, when Microsoft changed, like, remember MOM? You guys ever work with Microsoft Operations Manager, MOM? And then it got changed to SCOM, System Center Operations Manager, and they just kept pulling all these things into into
And then,
System Center, and I kept saying,
and then changed back to Operations Manager, and then changed to
did?
Microsoft Operations Manager. And
Yeah, it's
oh yeah,
crazy.
oh yeah, they
But I
changed
was
that.
I was worried that they were going to change SQL Server into System Center Database System or something like that. You
Yeah.
know, that's what I was worried, that they were going to change SQL Server's name, but they haven't. So don't do it.
I can't remember. Like Azure SQL database used to have a different name, and now enough
Yeah.
time has passed. Like 2018 is finally the year that I forgot what the old name was.
Yeah, and I think it officially is just SQL Database.
Yeah, SQL
And people
database.
just put the word Azure on there to avoid confusion.
Yeah, maybe it used to be like Microsoft SQL DB or something. I actually don't really remember.
I think it might have had a couple different names before this current name.
Yeah.
So we don't have any dogs named Azure. However, Amina says that I heard somebody calling their dog Alexa, and I looked around to see who has Alexa outside their home.
Nice.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a dog, Mister. So if we're at a park, I can just yell, "Hey, Mister," and then every dad at the park turns around, but I'm just calling my dog. It's not quite the same as Alexa, though. It's not quite the same as Alexa. So I actually kind of did spoilers on this already by talking at SQL in the City. But what were you guys' favorite conversations or highlights that you had at SQL in the City? And this one, Kathi didn't do the SQL in the City summits in 2018. So sorry, Kathi, sorry about that one.
Maybe next year, I hope.
Hopefully next year. How about you, Grant?
Well, I mean, two things. Your keynote on coffee, pizza, and the other thing.
Videos.
Coffee, peanuts,
Videos, right?
Blockbuster,
Videos.
yeah.
Yeah. Coffee, pizza, and videos was amazing. If nothing else, I went and grabbed the Domino's app just so I could watch the data flow on a pizza order. It was no, I mean it wasn't even, I mean, I could have gotten a pizza from anywhere. I did that because of you. It was inspirational. And no, seriously, and joking too, but both. It really was great. That was a great thing. The SQL in the City, though, the real trick there was especially the summits. We've got a lot of great people in the room, and I would have a hard time narrowing it down. The conversations that I had several. I think the biggest one though was, and I can't remember exactly who I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody about containers, and they started kind of getting me to the point where I was like, oh, now I get it. And it was educational for me to be talking to people, that we were there to talk about how we do things at Redgate and how Redgate can help. They were educating me at the same time. So, I mean, that was really a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a great event because of that.
Yeah. I agree.
So for me, I think early in the year, we did a summit in London prior to the GDPR taking effect. So this was in May. And we had a panel up there where we talked about various things. But one of the highlights for me was Simon Sabin, who's a friend of ours and a well-known consultant and MVP in the UK. He stood up and he kind of said, listen, I know this is hard. I know this is stuff that we're all a little bit struggling with, right? Complying with the GDPR. But he said, this is what we should have been doing for decades. I mean, this is how we should handle data. This is how we should treat people's data, as it should be, have some rights for the individual about which it's there. And I was surprised at how many people were like, you're absolutely right. We should have been doing this. That they really agree. As much as GDPR, PCI, or HIPAA, all these things are a pain for managing data. In some sense, we've gotten really lazy with how we deal with data and how we treat customers. And I kind of agree with that. To me, that was just this great moment of, we should just be doing better as an industry.
Yeah. Learning from people at these events, I think really, and the fact that learning goes both ways. And this is true about SQL Saturdays as well. This is true about the past summit. Like a lot of the magic that happens at these events is that. And sometimes the magic that happens is at cocktail hour. Like you don't have to drink the cocktails, but that's where a lot of these conversations happen. And this is why I think if you're going to a SQL Saturday, give the after party a chance. Even if you don't feel like drinking, that's fine. Even if you don't want to order the food, that's fine. Get like a diet soda or whatever, and just see, start up conversations with a variety of people. At the Sequel in the City New York event, I had a lot of great conversations, but one at the after event, I got to talk to a young technologist who is tasked with implementing DevOps at her company. And the story went a little different than it often does, because a lot of times we implement this first with the app dev teams. It seems like that's the lowest hanging fruit. But in the case of this company, for various political and social reasons, like that team just was really hard to budge, and she was having a hard time making progress with them. So she changed things up, and she actually found a database team who was more into the idea of it. They were more invested in it, and just for various like political and social reasons, it made more sense for the database to go first, proving that it can happen and proving that it's not that hard. And they demonstrated great success with automating their release pipeline and removing manual work. And then the app dev teams followed, which was, and just talking to her about, you know, what were the hard parts she hit along the way and how did she get through them was just so enlightening in terms of the different ways this can play out at different companies. And that's the advice that you can get from, you know, anyone who you're connecting at these events, because you've got people at all different levels of implementation there. So I just had so many great conversations, but that one I really remember deeply, because it was just so interesting and unexpected and great to hear that if you're willing to adapt, you can get things to release in a different way. But there were some surprise moments at some of these events. Like, not if you guys who are attending, if you aren't all presenters, you don't always realize how hard it is to pull off these events. So we were in the Sequel in the City in London, and we were at the end of the day, and everything like gone really well. We've got a team who's really great at organizing these events, and I'm sitting in the back of the room. It's packed full of people, and we're listening to an amazing speaker from Microsoft talking about the future of the cloud.
And Kendra, you went away.
Kendra, your sound dropped.
That's part of the story.
Did it come back?
Yeah, there it is now.
Yeah, I got a little message, but it was still showing volume. So
how ironic when you're explaining a glitch.
Somebody was talking about Azure, and
it's the perfect slide for this, except instead of the audio going away, there was this extra audio that started coming from the speaker above my head. Just like this extra like conversation that wasn't the person on stage, and everybody around me sort of started rustling around. And then I like got up, and then someone else who works for Redgate, it was Janine, got up, and we both just were like headed out the door, because we both realized at the same time that someone had left the room with their microphone on from the previous session and had put it down somewhere in the venue.
Yeah.
This is not a one-room venue. And so we're like finding the hot mic to turn it off. Luckily, no one had taken it into the restroom.
Right.
It could have been far worse. And we were able to find the mic and silence it. But if you are a presenter, always remember, don't just take the mic off your body. Turn the microphone off electrically. And ideally put it back on the podium. That's just a lifelong lesson.
There we are.
A good moment of cardio for me. It was a great moment of exercise. Getting back into chat, we've got some folks who like the tip about from Vicky Harp, actually, who is a Microsoft Data Platform employee now, about not answering the security question with things that we can figure out. Yeah, I totally agree about that one, and I need to reset a bunch of security questions. In terms of Microsoft stuff, we've had a lot of announcements this year about stuff that's coming, from finally fixing the string or binary data would be truncated error that has plagued us forever to amazing new features in 2019. So what are your favorites? And folks, if you have favorites and you're attending, like, what are you excited about? This could be in any version of SQL Server, but what's new that makes you happy that Microsoft's doing?
All right, so I'll go. I mean, there's lots of stuff I think that's interesting in the new 2019 release where they're moving, but the secure enclave stuff with Always Encrypted to me is fantastic, because I thought Always Encrypted was a great idea to help us start having better security. Like, it's not perfect, but it's better. However, there were so many limitations with Always Encrypted, it wasn't really a practical thing at all. And I think now that they're implementing the secure enclaves, which lets us do proper query processing in a secure manner, I think that will start to help us get better with security across not the next couple of years, right? But 4, 5, 6 years down the road.
Yeah. Grant looks deep in thought. So Kathy, how about you?
I really like that they're continuing to add features to the intelligent query processing, like the I've got them written down here, so I say it right. Table variable deferred compilation and batch mode on row store. So I've played with those features. I love them. Those are the types of things that will unfortunately put some of the consultants doing query tuning out of business, but that's okay. We want SQL Server to run fast. We want people to love it, and these are the types of things that will go towards that.
Yeah.
It's not going to put anybody out of business.
I know. There's always something.
You can't tune crap code.
Yeah.
Well, there is one new feature that is going to tune crap code, and that is the scalar function inlining, which is a subset of that intelligent query processing. I am super excited about that. Grant is like, it's still crap code. It's true, but it's much faster because of that. That's 2019 plus, though.
Well, my one excitement is honestly is Linux. I didn't realize just how cool it was going to turn out to be, and the fact that SQL Server runs on it. Yeah, it's probably not the most flawless native methodology that they're using, but still, they are running on Linux, and it is very thoroughly supported, and it opens up a ton of things, that just all the different things you can do with Linux, and now, by the way, with SQL Server. The implication was that it was always going to just be small. Oh well, this company's 99% Linux, and they've got this one thing where they're running SQL Server, so they're going to get SQL Server now. And it's always like, well, why in hell would you do that, right? What motivation does that have? But no, that's not what's going on. People are really, really moving to Linux. I mean, you even got in the picture there. You've got Connor and Bob up on stage with Rohan, and they were talking about Linux and SQL Server, and it's a big stink now. So I mean, if you're not already tracking that stuff, you really got to. I mean, I think it's so exciting just the way it opens things up. I mean, it's fun that Dan brought up Creator Alter. That's also one of my favorites, but I'm not as excited about that as I am Linux.
And sometimes it's the little things. Mina is also happy that Microsoft is backporting the fixes for that stringer binary truncation error to 2016 and up. So not everything new is 2019 plus, which is very cool. Yeah. Robert says he's looking forward to more PowerShell on Linux, which is interesting. Things we would not have expected are happening. Things that we would not have expected. The following slide, I do want to be honest, I just wanted to make a dad joke about Kubernetes in the presentation, and here you have it in terms of features that make you say what. I actually don't have features that make me say what. I mean, I am kind of like, all right, well, who's ready to run production on a Kubernetes cluster right now? But then I'm also kind of like, well, that's not necessarily the point, because like Steve said, a lot of the times these things do evolve over time, and it's not that hard for me to imagine some companies running their entire infrastructure on Kubernetes clusters, maybe a little ways down the line. So I don't know if I have too much that just makes me say what. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of this stuff it's easy for us to get excited, or some people get excited because it's brand new, and we're doubtful that it's going to get adopted quickly. But we have to understand that that's just the way it is, right? There's so many people running 2008 R2 still 2012, so we have to do that. I wonder about the Kubernetes thing too, if it's going to, how it's going to catch on, but I think it will. I think it's just a question of time. I think we have to give it time that it'll go forward, right?
I never thought I'd be talking to customers running their entire infrastructure on Azure SQL database, but I talked to one yesterday, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole new world. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun to see. It's fun to see the excitement around there too, and the excitement around PowerPoint doing the unexpected there. So while PowerPoint comes back, let's talk about predictions for 2019. What are you guys excited about, or what do you want to happen in 2019?
I have a prediction. For 2019. In 2019, Microsoft's going to release a new version of SQL Server.
No way. I didn't know that. Is that NDA?
Oh, wait, they already announced that, didn't they?
It's really hard.
That.
Sorry.
Yeah, whoops. I think Grant's onto something though. I think they are probably gonna do that. In terms of Redgate stuff, there is some cool stuff that you guys can check out if you want. There's a thing called Spawn. There's a public website about this. And like it says, we've been looking into things like, what if I want to very quickly create a bunch of short-lived databases in the cloud on demand, and I want to really quickly spin up a cloud environment? This isn't the same thing as our SQL provision, and it isn't going to be the same customers who want it. This is going to be a different customer set who has different problems, but it's really exciting to think about. It's still in those early pages. There's a video about it on the Spawn site if you want to check it out. But we've got other projects in preview as well. Are you guys excited about any of that stuff that's coming about? Especially about Figleaf, the best named project of all time. Grant?
Well, I wasn't going to talk about Figleaf, although I agree it is the single best named project in a very long time. SQL Census, the stuff we're doing there that's going to be better supporting your ability to meet the compliance issues that are coming. I mean, probably more than half our audience right now is not caring about GDPR, although you should be, because they're in the US. But if you're in the US, you should be caring about the California Privacy and Protection Act. You should be caring about SHIELD. I mean, there's, whatever the heck they're going to call the laws out of North and South Carolina. I mean, it's the whole compliance regime is coming our way hard and fast, and you're going to need help. And SQL Census is a great way to start moving in that direction.
It's currently free to try it out too. Currently free, as is Figleaf. For those who aren't clued in on what the name Figleaf is the name of the new generation of data masking tools. In other words, hiding the naughty bits that you don't want people to see. And that is, the teams are working with people in the real world to find out, okay, what's the best way to build this tool to really meet your needs and to shape the tool with real kind of customer interaction as the focus there. Very cool to watch that happening. Other predictions. What do you guys think is going to happen with Microsoft? It's not Microsoft Data Studio anymore. It's Azure Data Studio now. Do you think that this is going to be we started this and then we abandoned it? Or do you think we're going to get a lot of follow through on this? And again, this stuff is not like things we secretly know. This is predictions based on guessing. Well, I mean, we do not have any secrets behind this, folks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go and look at my YouTube channel. I've got like a whole bunch of different Azure Data Studio videos I've been putting up over the last several months, and it's changing so fast. I mean, it's just moving so quickly. They're introducing new functionality and it's doing new things. I mean, some of it, I mean, I don't understand why I care about Jupyter Notebooks right now. Still, I do. Okay, cool. They were so excited when they told me it supports Jupyter Notebooks, and I went, "What are those?" Anyway, it's moving very fast, and it's doing some cool stuff, and I don't see them changing that acceleration. If anything, I think it's going to go faster and do more.
So I'm actually excited about Jupyter Notebooks because I was trying to figure out a way to rig it up to do it on my own, and I couldn't get it to work. Because the dream is, I mean, it's great for statistical analysis and other things, but there's the possibility of being able to teach someone T-SQL with just a Jupyter Notebook you share with them. Could be really, really cool. And they're able to run interactive queries right there in the notebook.
Yeah, see, I think Jupyter Notebooks are actually really good because things like Glenberry's administrative queries, I could put all of them in a cell and have them all execute separately or when I want them. So I think notebooks are huge. I don't know about Azure Data Studio. As much as Visual Studio Code has done really well, but it feels like as it's grown in areas that aren't where Visual Studio grows. So a lot of people that aren't necessarily C# project people or something else. So I still think I'm curious to see what happens. To me, it really depends on, is there enough Linux and Mac push and adoption that gets them to continue to move forward, or do they fall back to the default of doing more in Management Studio? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I do still harbor suspicions that it will just hang out as like SSMS's little friend that does some cool stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? Like this has happened before with Microsoft where they put a lot of resources in something and then they move them to something else. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
SQL Server database tools comes to mind. Oh my God, I say that out loud. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to do.
Yeah. If I had to put money on it, I don't think I would. I would not bet that I think we're still going to be using Management Studio in 5 years if I had to put money on it, but
Oh,
maybe I'm
God,
wrong.
that's depressing.
It depends on how you like Management Studio. I know people who are still like, man, I miss Enterprise Manager. So we have reached the end of our time, but I don't want to miss the bonus, which is the best DevOps poem ever written. This poem is written by Chris Unwin of Redgate, but it's going to be read for us by Steve Jones, who has the best poem reading voice ever. I think we can all agree.
All right.
So with that,
You ready for this? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the place not a server was stirring except the database. The DBAs sat in dim light, typing with care, in hopes of how well the deployment would fare. Their developers were nestled all snug in their beds, whilst visions of non-clustered indexes danced in their heads. And leisure traffic, connections, activity of all kinds gave the DBAs plenty of confidence in mind. When all of a sudden there arose such a clatter, one DBA sprung from their chair to see what was the matter. To SSMS they flew like a flash to find what had caused the poor DB to crash. The gathering of multiple changes to make had led to a rather ginormous mistake, when what to their wondering eyes should appear through the smoke, but several stored procs, which appeared to have broke. Dependencies thrown like caution to wind, a deadline appeared and none of them grinned. Deadlocks and latches, too, were plaguing this night. It seemed like SQL Server was up for a fight. They worked and they worked, all through the night. Weary and exhausted, no one knew of their plight. Till ping went the inbox, and again, and again. It seemed also users were feeling the pain. That's it, said one DBA who'd had quite enough. I gave up cookies and warm milk to have it this rough. So with a face quite contorted by strain, they started to roll back, but that was also pain. Trying to find who had changed what, when, and why, had them verging on madness and shouting out why. But then in a flash of red and green light, a man in red coat had appeared from the night. Ho, 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 he bellowed, stomach jingling along too. It seemed at this point there's just one thing to do. So with a flick of his wrist and a jingle of bells, Santa highlighted the errors and all the code smells. You see, poor DBAs, you needn't be pained. You just need to be agile, there's much to be gained. Big bang deployments are dangers, you see, like leaving for too long the lights on your tree. And like that, as if all had been a dream, the DBAs awoke away from their screen. 'Twas Christmas once more, and now they knew why. In the new year, perhaps, we should give DevOps a try.
Really is truly the greatest DevOps poem ever written. So that is by Chris Unwin. He's the author who you can see on the screen. And if you would like to hear this read in a British accent, you can check out the latest episode of DBAL, which is going to drop, I believe, today or tomorrow. They also have some really great tomorrow. They have some great past episodes. They each include like notes on a beer tasting, as well as some like really stellar dad jokes in there. They're really, really good. So you can check that at redgate.com/DBAL. Really great podcast there. So thanks y'all for joining us. We've gone over by 3 minutes, which is right on time for me. So, here's a great 2019. I think it's going to be a great year together.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, y'all. Thanks for attending, and we'll see y'all later.
All right, love you guys. Bye.
Bye, folks.